Hey, Nicole Hunstman here from moderncosmic.com. In this video, we're going to do a short tutorial. I'm going to teach you how to read a solar return chart. Now, I'm not going to be able to include everything in this video that you might get from reading a book on solar returns. There are many wonderful resources out there, but this is kind of a fun jump into the technique if you've never practiced it before. So first and foremost, what is a solar return? If you are unaware, this is the perfect video for you. So a solar return is a chart that's cast. You can cast one each year. We would take your original sun zodiac sign and by degree that's found in your natal chart. And this is casting a chart this year when the sun returned to that zodiac sign and to that degree. Okay. With this chart, all of the planets most likely will be different than they are in the birth chart. The moon could be in the same zodiac sign, but typically everything's different, and all of the angular houses are different as well, usually. Okay. Now, next thing you do, you're going to start with step one. Just like when reading a birth chart, you're going to examine the primary triad. So the sun, the moon, and the rising sign of the solar return chart are really important. And the difference here with reading a solar return and interpreting this chart versus just a birth chart is we superimpose the solar return chart on the birth chart. The way I like to do it, I like to look at the solar return first by itself without the information from the birth chart and digest it a bit and at least try to get the major themes out of the solar return and then pop it on top of the natal chart. So you can, on astro.com, you can do a natal and solar return chart, together. Only thing I don't like about this, the reason I like to look at the solar return first is for me, when I orient myself relative to a chart, I like directions, I like visually seeing where everything is at the way that I expect it to be at the 10th house at the top and 4th house at the bottom, all the angular houses, 1st and 7th, where they're supposed to be. So at any rate, I always start with just the solar return by itself, but then you're going to superimpose that solar return chart on top of the birth chart. And then you let the magic begin, okay? So after you've looked at the primary triad, so you're looking at the sun. If you're a total newbie to this, okay, you look at the sun. Obviously, you know the sign it's in, right? It's going to be the same as the natal chart. Look at the ruler of that zodiac sign, okay? Which house does that ruler fall into? This is always the first step when examining any planet in any chart. Where's the ruler of that planet then fall, because it colors and it gives description to the planet. So where's the ruler of the sun fall? What aspects are being made to the ruler? What aspects are being made to the sun? What do we have any conjunctions? Are there any planets that are conjoining the sun? Okay, definitely will give you some interesting tidbits of information if you've got Mars conjunct the sun versus maybe someone's got their sun is conjunct Pluto or something, or conjunct Neptune, one of the slower outer planets. These are two very different years. Next, you look at the moon. What is the zodiac sign the moon is placed in? Look at the element and modality and relate that relative to the natal moon. Okay, that natal moon is most likely in a different sign. And I will give you an example. I have got my natal moon in Aries, and my good friend, he also has his natal moon in Aries. I've got this really cool Leo friend, natal moon in Aries, and both of us have our solar return moons in Pisces, and it's so different from Aries. Pisces is this water sign. It's even the metaphor of it being the very last sign in the zodiac, and Aries is the first, and Aries knows what it wants and is assertive and goes after things and is passionate, and there's a lot of energy and vitality to Aries. Pisces is a little more nebulous, and Pisces emotionally is really different than Aries. It's this feeling of not knowing, like feeling things and being like, what is this thing inside of me that I'm feeling? What is this? It's very unfamiliar to someone who has an Aries moon. So anyway, you want to see how these two moons are relating to each other. This dance between the two. If you've got moons that are in harmonious zodiac signs, then you've got someone whose year is perhaps a little bit less emotionally crazy. Also look at the house placement of that moon relative to the natal moon and the natal moon's house placement. That will give you further clarity on that moon and how it's going to be expressed. Next, then, we move on to the personal planets, of course. And so Venus typically is going to sort of show where you're going to derive your pleasure for the year. And for some people, that could be through romance. For some, it could be through business. You could have a year where work is really chugging along. Now, you have to always remember, even with the sun, the moon, all of the planets. Not only do they hold space for circumstances in your life in a sense, so when we talk about your love life, or, I mean, the house is really the actual circumstance, but these things do hold space as the sort of where you're going to place your energy relative to your love life. For Venus, for example, your pleasures with Venus. But also, these can represent people. So the Venus could represent it could be a female, most likely, but it could also be a love interest. It could be somebody who's just beautiful and pleasant. Look at the house it falls into. Venus in the 10th house, for example, that could be with work. That could just mean either finding pleasure through work, having an inflow of money, or having some sort of experience at work where things are maybe a little bit, they come sort of easily. There's a little bit of laziness even maybe applied to work. Or you could have, like I said, a person who brings cash into the business, or a person who brings some element of design or art or beauty, those types of things, So there's a creative element to Venus. So remember, the planets each represent not only the sort of keywords and the parts of the psyche that they stand for and they represent, they can also represent an actual human being, okay? Or a business, you could have, depending on what's happening with that planet, the other things happening to it, could represent a larger entity, okay? Okay, next thing we look at with the solar return chart, you want to look at the angular houses. So first house, fourth house, seventh house, 10th house. We're looking at the cusps of these houses. So as you're traveling in a counterclockwise direction, it's the first, little pie shape. It's the first edge you run into. That's the cusp. It shows us where we are moving from one house to the next, okay? First house. In 7th house, this is our axis of identity. It's our axis of the self versus the other. First house being the self, 7th house being the other. And then we've got 4th and 10th house. 4th being the house has to do with our home. It is our unconscious. It is our roots. And then the 10th house, which is the part of us that's seen. It's the world above us, the status, our career, how others see us, this kind of thing. It's the most visible part of the sky. If you think about this, the moment you were born, it's right directly above you. So these angular houses are important. You need to look at the solar return chart. Look at the angular houses of the solar return chart. When you do the overlay on top of your natal chart, look and see the houses in your natal chart that these angles fall into. This is where an astrologer comes into handy. Gosh, because it's our job to synthesize and analyze the combinations of all of the different symbols. Everything from the zodiac, all of the 12 signs of the zodiac, to all of the planetary symbolisms, the house meanings. So, when you're overlaying these cusps, these angular houses into the houses of the birth chart, there's going to be a little mixing that happens there. So you need to be, if you're reading this for your own chart, bear in mind, if it's the first house, you're looking at the ascendant has to do with the individual's identity. And it's also in a solar return chart. This is a new year for you. Your ascendant shows how you initiate into new situations. So the ascendant in the solar return chart for you is this year how you will be starting new things, how you'll be initiated into this year somewhat. And it's a very important angle in the solar return chart. Probably even the most important, I would say, because it shows you this year kind of the flavor. It's like the piece of stained glass that we're going to go ahead and look at the whole year through. And I don't know if I mentioned this or not yet, but when you cast your solar return chart, it needs to be for the location you're at on that day of the actual solar return for you that year. Okay, so I was in Telluride on my birthday. It's funny, my boyfriend took me out of town. I didn't know we were going. I was kind of annoyed because I couldn't do my solar return chart in advance, but he took me to Telluride. It ended up being the same chart as if we'd been in Utah. But I just ran Donald Trump's chart, and when I put all of this information in and I ran it through the solar return, I forgot to put the reference place in. I just was trying to get to the chart. And I'm like, oh, this is a pretty great chart, He had Moon conjunct MC, which is fantastic for public opinion. And then so it was his solar return moon was conjunct his natal MC. And then his natal moon was conjunct his solar return MC. And I'm like, oh, this is fantastic for him, And then I realized before I could even look at the rest of the chart, oh, I didn't put the location in. So I found out he was in Aberdeen, Scotland, put that in, completely changed his solar return chart as far as house placements. Sorry, Donald, you should have been in Utah on your on your birthday, because that would have been a fantastic chart for this upcoming year. So make sure you pay attention to reference place. That's important. With this, once you've got your angular houses, how they fall into the natal birth chart, then you're going to want to go through and break down the whole solar return chart. So this is just like doing a birth chart. You're going planet by planet. Which house is it located in? Look at it relative to the natal birth chart. You can even do a synastry. You can save the solar return chart and then do a synastry between the solar return chart and your birth chart, which is pretty cool. That way you can actually see the inner aspects between the two on like a synastry chart. And it's very helpful for you to kind of, it'll pull things out that maybe you didn't see when you're just kind of cross-referencing the two charts. All right, so we've looked at the angular houses, or the cusps rather, of the angular houses and how they fell into the natal birth chart. Now we're going to go ahead and take a closer look at the planets in the solar return chart and how those fall into the natal chart. Very important, the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th houses per usual. These houses are important because they deal with, they're like these parts of our life where we interact with the world around us, okay? First house has to do with you, your personality. It's your, the mask and the persona that we wear, and it's our identity. So clearly it's important. It has to do, if you believe in reincarnation, it's like this life, this earthly life. 4th house has to do with home, your family, your roots, it's your emotions, your heart. So obviously if there are any planets that are in the solar return chart that are falling into this 4th house for you, look at how, analyze what those planets are and how they're affecting that, what they mean in that 4th house. Look at the aspects being made to them as well. 7th house is relationships, so it could be everything from a business relationship to your marital partnership, and it could even be if you're in court. It's a good house to look at. Look at for malefics there, you know, if you've got Mars or Saturn there, perhaps Mars would be sort of causing problems, activating issues, and Saturn would be restricting things. If you have Pluto there, it would be there. It's going to be there for a while. It's going to be in this solar return chart, and it probably was last year. And you know, Pluto's there for a bit. So, but look at what's there. Analyze what that planetary meanings are relative to that house. Okay, that will give you a flavor. Important to note, and this is kind of a cool little trick, the ascendant of the solar return chart. Look at the house it falls into in your natal birth chart, okay? This is going to be the single most important house for you this year. So I'm going to shoot a separate video that will talk about where that ascendant falls relative to, you know, which house it falls into in your birth chart, what that means for you for this upcoming year. Perhaps that area where you will have some sort of big event, or you will have some focus. You'll be focusing your energy on that particular house for the year. Other than that, if you're interested in having a solar return chart reading done by me, I actually do a full forecast reading where we look at solar returns and your progress chart and your transits. I only do this for my clients once we have done a birth chart reading, and this isn't to try and be tricky or to try to like make more money off of you or something. It's simply a good astrologer would never claim to be able to do a forecasting reading without first having done a birth chart reading. I can't do a proper forecasting without understanding how you are built in the first place. So we do the birth chart reading first, and then we move on to the forecasting. We can set something up where we do birth chart and forecasting together. You save a little bit of money if you do it that way as well. Go to my website, moderncosmic.com, for more information about setting up a reading, or you can inbox me here on YouTube and I'll get back to you. But thanks for watching, and let me know if you've got any questions and any techniques that you like with solar returns down below. Thanks. Bye.